It's time for The Scribble, your weekly fix of celebrity chats, bizarre stories in the news, and basic random chatter with best-selling author and syndicated radio host Jeremy Bradley. Make sure your seat is in the upright and locked position and your barf bag is securely in place. Here's Jeremy Bradley.
Thank you very much, Larson. Jeremy Bradley here. This is The Scribble. Thank you so much for tuning in today. The mainstream media, I think even just saying those names gives people a reaction, right? I mean, we've heard lately, and full disclosure, I own a media business. I've been in the news business for 20-some years. I've, majored in journalism and all that other stuff. But the common thought nowadays is that you can't trust the mainstream media, right? You hear mainstream media or MSM, and people will undoubtedly have a reaction. Usually it's negative. And so I'm asked all the time what my thoughts are on the state of the news industry. And I was going to use the term news business because that seems to be where things have headed in recent years. So I'm going to talk about what things were like back in the day, like I'm an old man back in my day, and then my thoughts on where things are headed, or where things are, I guess, present day, not necessarily where they're headed. I mean, I think that it's only going to go downhill, but I'm going to talk about how I feel about the news present day. So that's coming up on The Scribble right after this.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes.
Ever had something to get off your chest but never had the balls to say it? That's a load of crap. Speak Free with JB.com is exactly what you've been waiting for. Your chance to tell it like it is and not care what anybody else thinks. Have your say on issues of the day. Join newspaper and radio columnist Jeremy Bradley as he tells it like it is. Hundreds of thousands of people have stopped by, including some well-known celebrities who have had a chat with JB and speak candidly about what's really going on in the world. You can join them too. Have a rant or a rave. Be brave and head on over to www.speakfreewithjb.com now.
Jeremy Bradley here, back on The Scribble. So I knew from a very early age that I loved the news. I was obsessed with CNN. Now again, before anybody starts groaning and going, oh, CNN, fake news, just hear me out, okay? Hear me out. I was glued to the TV when CNN, I mean, it wasn't always about politics, right? I mean, if anybody who knows that from back in the day, it was breaking news around the world. So, your anchors are in Atlanta or New York or wherever they were. I don't know where they are or where they were at the time. But then there's an emergency plane landing in Dallas. Well, we go to our Dallas affiliate, right, our colleagues over, and we take their feed, and we narrate as we watch the plane is coming in. I was riveted by that. That was just what's going to happen, like what's going on. And same thing with, a major fire or an explosion or something. And so I remember I had a little 13-inch TV sitting on my bed in my bedroom at home, living in my parents' house, and just having CNN on the screen all the time. And funny, this is absolutely true. The logo, or bug, the logo on the screen, corner of the screen that said, CNN, or even just the red, like a breaking news banner, or the ticker, or just whatever, was literally burned into the screen of my television. Again, remember, these are those big, fat Horkin TVs. Even though it was 13 inches, it weighed probably more than 13 pounds. But again, I was fascinated by it. As soon as there would be the banner that comes up, breaking news, or the bumper, or the, whatever it was, I was on it. I was, okay, what's it going to be? Rarely was it about politics. Rarely was it about president, senator, I mean, unless it was a major story, somebody dies or hospitalized or whatever. Fine, sure. But it was actual news. It was news. Stuff that, people wanted to watch. Like, I realized that, and also too, you have to remember I'm Canadian. So for Canadians, politics isn't really a huge deal. And we actually don't really understand. I mean, although I live in West Hollywood most of the time now. But even still, like, I watch American news and I'm kind of like, okay, it's kind of enough about the politics thing. But I also get it because politics is so dominating in day-to-day life. Whether that is about healthcare and whatever, and immigration and deportations and whatever, like I get it. So I understand that, okay, this stuff is on the news because it's kind of a big deal, that people are getting shot by ICE agents and killed or, whatever it is. So I get that. But that's where, there really is a big separation between, Canadian news and American news. And, in Canadian news, maybe the lead anchor might have a talent agent, but that's something that I just kind of experienced for the first time when I really, I've been an entertainment correspondent now. I haven't really done the actual like hard hitting city news or national news. I've been doing the celebrity fluff kind of stuff. But American journalists get talent agents to get them jobs at stations. Well, like when I first heard about that, I kind of thought, well, you've kind of really made it sort of like the entertainment business, right? Like it's actors that have agents, right? Professional athletes have agents. A news reporter? A news anchor? Really? That's an American thing. It really is. It really is. So just the fact that it's set up that way is a little bit weird, right? So back to when I was sitting on my bed, as a kid, was I even a teenager at the time? I probably maybe just barely a teenager. So let's say I was 13. Okay, let's say I was 13. But even then, I was the news just fascinated me. So, cut to, there was one weekend. Well, actually, when I was in high school, I had a membership for the YMCA, for the gym. So I would take the bus downtown in Winnipeg, and I would go and I would run the track, and I was the only kid that was taking the like step aerobics classes and things like that. All right, let's look at the room here. Which one's the gay? Oh, it would be him. And I was front row. It's absolutely true. But anyway, so there was one day that I was going downtown, and the bus would go down the same streets, obviously, all the time. But the street was blocked, and there was a whole bunch of smoke blowing across the street. So I got off of the bus and wanted to go see, what was happening. I thought, I'm going to jump in, right? Because now I've got this news curiosity, right? I've seen it on TV, and now it's literally right in front of me. So I did. I ended up going and looking, and there was a building that was burning down. It was actually right across from City Hall. So I'm thinking, this is a big story. Like, the City Hall is right across this short little street. So I ended up going to a corner store, and I bought a disposable camera. Again, you have to remember, we're going back probably 30 years, I guess, maybe. So digital cameras, cell phones, that wasn't a thing. It was not happening. But I did. I bought a disposable camera, and on those things you had maybe 12 or 24 pictures, right? Like you had the film in it, and then you were limited into what you could take. It didn't have a memory card. This was a roll of film. So I ended up going and taking all the pictures. So I blew through the roll. And so then I ended up going and I bought another one. I don't remember if it was 12 or 24 or 36 pictures, but obviously that's not very many, especially if it's, a building burning down. But I went and I got a second one. And so I said, screw the gym, I'm covering, I'm covering news here. And here I am, a kid. And I really did. I went, I didn't pass, police lines or anything like that. So I didn't, I wasn't getting in the way. But I was almost like right behind a firefighter who was, who had the hose going onto the building, or to the rubble, I guess it was at that point. And I just started snapping these pictures. And I remember when I went, so again, for our younger listeners, you would then take your roll of film You would get it developed. Now, back in the day, you'd pick them up a week later. You didn't even get to see them right away, so you don't even know if your shots turned out. There was nothing like, hey, look at what's happening literally right now, and posting on Instagram. That was not a thing. So you'd wait for about a week to get them back. They weren't, some of them might have been blurry, or your finger was in the way, or the flash didn't go, or something. So one of them's ruined, right? And then you're like, maybe I've got a good one in these 11 now? How about maybe 10 good shots? And so I went, when I ended up getting them back, you'd have to go to the drugstore or a big grocery store that would have a photomat. And I flipped through these, whatever it was, 30, perhaps pictures. I just remember looking at them over and over again thinking, oh my God, I was, capturing the news. I was, I'm going to be a photojournalist. I'm going to be, out there. And I ended up getting a photo album. And I put them, and they were kind of the front section of it. And I just remember thinking someday, these will be my first news photos that I ever took. I still have that photo album, by the way. It's in a drawer in my house. But that was kind of the start of it. I was just fascinated, like, what's going to happen? It's not that I was a pyro and I wanted to see fire. Fire. No, it was just, you don't know what's going to happen. And so let's just find out together. And so what appealed to me about being a journalist was, I'm going to go in every morning and not know what I'm covering. I don't know what's going to happen. So early on, I took, I was big into writing, and then I obviously had this news curiosity. So when I was in high school, I had demonstrated that I could write and expressed an interest in it. And so I was involved in a job placement program. So I was able to okay, so some places have some high schools have a job shadow. So that's, you would go to, let's say, a law office if you want to be a lawyer, or you have another specific interest, or maybe you can shadow, the fireman or something one day because you want. So I didn't do that. I had an actual job placement. So it wasn't just me going one day, following along, and then coming back to school and writing a report about it. I was able to do a job placement. And my first one that I had was with the Winnipeg Police Service. And they had an internal newsletter called The Spotlight. And so I sat with the editor, and she was, an officer on a desk job, basically. And you always kind of wondered in hindsight, like, these are professionally trained adults, and here's this, kid coming in, right? And there's no way, no matter how much I could dress up, I was not looking grown up. I mean, that's just, even today, if I'm dressed formally, I don't look like a grown up. I look at the red carpets pictures of the studio wall behind me. We've got the entire wall of photos of me on red carpets, and I just look and go, oh my God, I look like people are going to ask, whose kid I am. Like, what's this kid doing? No, I'm hosting a national broadcast. Thank you. So I was at the Winnipeg Police Service, and I would write, like an article. It wasn't anything big, but I would go down there or I would cover, if they had like a community event or initiative or something, or a program they were launching, I would interview somebody, get some information, then write about it. Again, it was their internal newsletter, so this wasn't, it's not like it was a big union job or whatever. It was kind of like, well, we've got this kid, bring him in. He likes to write, so we'll give him one story, and that's that. I was not a big shot. I was not employed. And then at the CBC, so Canada has a public broadcaster, and that's the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CBC. So I went in there, and I was paired up with a journalist, coincidentally, who one of my family members, or a couple of family members, knew. And so her name was Danielle Kiefler. She ended up later dying of cancer, actually, a couple years later. So I was teamed up with her on my first day, and it was incredible because here I am going to the morning meeting. You have to remember, like I said, I'm 16 years old, 17 years old at this point, and I'm in a federal building, and it's I'm in the newsroom, and I go to the morning meeting with everybody, and I'm introduced, and it's all these people that I watch on the news every day. Like, it was almost kind of, I don't want to say starstruck, but it was sort of, that's Joni Nicolo, that's Diana Swain, the anchor, that's Ross Rutherford, the investigative guy, and that's Sandy Coleman, she does the weather, and that's, so it was a little bit kind of, but they were also welcoming, which was also really cool. But that in the back of their head, they're going, oh my God, who's this fucking kid? Who's this kid? Is that somebody's nephew? Like, what's the deal? So the very first date, which was really interesting, Danielle Kiefler, the journalist, the reporter, she was given a story about a kid. It was a boy. He was my age. I actually went to school with him. He said that he was roughed up by police. And so there was this, there was a press conference. So I said in the meeting, how funny is this to have the kid sitting at this meeting with all these, they said, oh, the kid's name is, I can't remember what his name was now. But anyway, he said that he was roughed up by cops, whatever. And all of a sudden I would say, I went to school with him. I don't think that I was going to school with him in high school. I think it was younger years that I had known him, because he wasn't in my school. And so that was perfect, because like all of a sudden here I am thinking, oh my God, I've got a connection to this story. Like I have an in. So sure enough, we ended up going to the press conference over, and he remembered me. So we were able to, land an interview with this kid. So then we take him in the news van because they wanted him to kind of reenact what he said happened. And it was kind of, the dramatic kind of his storytelling of it. And I credit myself, well, yeah, you know what? Because he knew me. James something. I can't remember his last name. Shit. But anyway, doesn't matter. But yeah, he said that he was, roughed up by the cops. And so we ended up with his mom, bringing them in the news van. And of course, me acting like a big shot, going, I'm working on the story with them today, whatever. But that was my first day at the CBC was, And so then we shoot what we've got to shoot. And we go back to the building. And this was one of those things where it was like, okay, you can take a lunch now or whatever. And I was just so revved up. I was like, this is just so cool. So in the afternoon, we go into the editing suite, and I'm just kind of sitting there, and Danielle is sitting there with the editor, and they're putting together, and remember, this is before the days of like super digital stuff. So there was actual tape and things they were using. And I just remember kind of sitting there, and I kind of felt like chiming in, but I didn't want to get in the way, right? Like, just let them do their thing, especially because it's the 6 o'clock news. So the clock is ticking. I don't want, all of a sudden I touch something and now I've erased the video. But so they do their thing, and I remember actually asking, because at the end, she would say, Danielle Kiefler, CBC News, Winnipeg. I actually did ask her, I'm like, could you say, Danielle Kiefler with Jeremy Bradley, CBC News, Winnipeg? And she said no. She wasn't really a bitch about it, but she did kind of, I think that maybe she was actually sort of offended because, you're kind of asking a journalist to put your name on her work as well. Like, really, she did everything. I was just sort of tagging along. But because then she said to me later, she's like, well, no, then I'd go and say, I'd give the editor's name, right? And then I'd go say Wendy, who was the camera person. And, so I was kind of like, okay, well, I get it. So then it's coming up to close to 6 o'clock, and they let me sit in the control room. And again, I'm in the corner on like a bar stool kind of a thing, just kind of watching, and in amazement about how the news is on the, like, I remember setting my VCR at home to record it. Meanwhile, I'm there, right? So when I come home, I think the news at that time was an hour long. So I would have left there at about 7 or so. And then I'm guessing I bussed home. I don't know. So that was probably maybe about 20-25 minutes to get home. But I remember my mom, anyway, at least coming and wanting to like know how it was and, what was it like your first day, whatever. And I said, I'm going to go and watch it. And so then I go and I watch it. And I was like so hyper, almost, bouncing off the walls just because I was part of that story. So I ended up doing this for quite some time. I ended up doing the 2 job placements at the same time, which no other student had done at the time. And I stayed with the CBC, and Danielle Kiefler, I was still there on her last day, which ended up also then just being my last day too, because the school year or whatever. And so she was leaving. I believe they said retiring, but I think it was the health thing. She did have cancer, so I don't know. But either way, it was her last day, and I remember feeling kind of like, oh, we sort of had this bond. And my aunt, who knew her, later said, Danielle was lesbian. I thought maybe that's kind of why we, maybe she saw the young little gay boy and was sort of like, that's why we kind of hit it off, right? I don't know. I'm just, and I will never know, obviously. But so anyway, on the very last day, we go at, the morning meeting again, and I don't remember what the story was that we were going to do, but all of a sudden you hear, because they've got police scanners and things outside the room or whatever, all of a sudden you hear that there was a house explosion across the city. A house blew up. Yeah. What a great last story to have, right? Obviously, you're not hoping that there was death or anything, right? But that's a big story. So we didn't even stay for the meeting, right? That's the thing about the news business is, you might miss a meeting because you're out on a story, but you know what, whatever. So yeah, we ditched the meeting. We didn't even, and so we go and here we are. And after a while of working together, we kind of had this, I was almost like her assistant in a way. So I kind of knew how she liked to do things. And so when we get there, it was obviously very blocked off. Obviously. Now, when we got there was no fire or anything like that, but it was still smoky and it was a little bit, but a very big area closed off because you don't know, is this a gas explosion? Is this, you don't want anybody too close, of course. So we decided to split up. I ended up going with Wendy, the camera woman, and then Danielle went and she had her notepad and was kind of, talking to people. Again, before the days of cell phones and, all that other crap. There was no such thing. And so I remember going, and there was a firefighter who was coming through a yard that we were kind of standing beside. And I just remember holding out the microphone going, so what do we know so far? And, he wasn't there to be interviewed. He was still doing the job. And so Wendy, the camera, was like, yeah, maybe later. But I was right in there. I was so ready to go, right? And so then I happened to be with... at the police tape with other onlookers. And again, before the days of everybody whipping out their phone and taking pictures of it, that wasn't a thing. So all of a sudden, this blonde woman comes up through the crowd and is, freaking out going, that's my mom's house. That's my mom's house. So Wendy, the camera person, she goes and shows, and I'm holding the microphone. And so I'm standing beside the woman and I'm holding the microphone, and I caught the audio of that. And so for a brief moment in the edit, in the actual news story, you see the woman come. She's carrying a Slurpee, which was also a little bit weird because it was probably maybe 9:30 or 10 o'clock in the morning, so we weren't sure. Now, Winnipeg is the Slurpee capital of the world, or it used to be anyway. So I was kind of like, that's a little bit weird. It was sort of a chilly day, and so you found out your mom's house exploded and you stopped for the Slurpee, or you had the Slurpee before? Because that means that you had it very early in the morning. Nevertheless, who am I to judge? But anyway, so in the end, we ended up, she pieced together the story with a bunch of, kind of audio that I grabbed, even just from asking people. I wasn't talking on the TV or anything like that. But for that brief second, you do see me standing beside the blonde daughter who arrives. And I did. I took a picture of the TV when that was on the screen. I had it on a VHS tape, and I watched that story over and over and over again. There I am, me pointing. Again, this kid, I'm this little blonde kid. Don't look professional, don't look adult, don't look like I'm a journalist, but there I am with this big, long, microphone. And so that was my last day at the CBC. So that even just kind of solidified it for me, going, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm destined to do. And then sure enough, I take journalism in school, and I, majored in it, and we did broadcasting. And so, to learn a lot about it before actually going to college for it was really helpful. And it helped me develop a portfolio because I had professionally published work at that point, right? So in the program at school, it was unfortunate because the college had just opened a new campus in downtown Winnipeg, coincidentally, diagonally across the street from where that fire was by City Hall years earlier. And so my first year was the first year of that new building, of that new downtown campus. So the equipment didn't work. There was a radio studio, but it wasn't set up. It didn't work. We couldn't do anything in it. There was a TV production class, but we couldn't do any editing or anything because none of the stuff was set up. So it was a very sort of a cheap kind of, it was almost like we were playing pretend, or this is how you would do it, but there was no hands-on experience doing it, right? Like you're kind of, you can't really learn the features of these big TV cameras, by reading the instruction manual, right? Like you kind of have to do it. You kind of have to press the buttons, you turn the knob, do this, do that. So I felt a little bit ripped off for that. But, and the computers didn't work half of the time, or the printers. You'd print, we were on like the second floor, and you'd hit print, and now you got to find out, did it go to the fourth floor? I don't even know where it ended up because, it was bad. But anyway, so in that program at school, you really were taught the fundamentals of journalism. One of the things that I remember, Duncan McMonigal, who was a big reporter back in the day, became an instructor, and his big thing with journalism was says who, S-E, Canadians, Z, S-E-Z, who, S-E-Z, who. You always need to give your source, because you don't want to report something and then all of a sudden it's going to be like, well, Duncan was wrong. No. Duncan is citing or sourcing whoever it was, right? A government official, a PR rep, somebody. You got to say, who said that? Says who? Right? So let's say 1,000 people were arrested in the protest. Says who? Was it the New York police? Was it the FBI? Was it the White House? Says who? Right? You've got to attach a source to it. So that's something that I always look for, even now, and I'm finding it less and less now with these, not the mainstream media outlets, these independent journalists or citizen journalists, is I'm not seeing that sourcing. I'm not seeing the credit as to who said that. And when I don't see that, I always go, yeah, you know what? I'm going to take a beat before I believe it. I'm going to maybe find another story about the same subject and then see if they've sourced it or if they've cited anybody, because then I'm gonna lean more to believing that one. And so that's something you were told without exception you had to do when you were reporting. Another thing would be you would get double or triple confirmation on something. So let's say that you're investigating or you're doing an expose or something that's very, very, shockingly newsworthy, or scandalous would be the better word. You need double or triple confirmation. And what that means is, okay, so I talk with a source. I need to get another source who's unrelated to that first one. Maybe doesn't even know that person. Totally far removed from any sort of connection whatsoever. If the second person tells me the exact same thing, and not by me leading them down the path to saying it, right? They need to give me so tell me what happened. If it is exactly the same, no detail different, and it's a reliable source, right? It's a trusted source. I've got my double confirmation. Now, as I was saying, you could do triple. If it's a really, really big one, you would then, see if you can get a third one, and like I said, these two sources don't know. They don't know each other. They don't know that you've reached out to them. They're totally, far removed from that. And that would be your confirmation. Now, at the same time, you're also going to then fact check perhaps whatever it is too, right? You want to get that information. And so that's what journalism was about back then. It wasn't me injecting any sort of opinion or position on something. And that's one of the things that bothered me back in the day, in the daily newspapers that we had, the Winnipeg Free Press, which I ended up later becoming a video columnist at. My high school was right across the street from it. So when I would leave every day at school, I was always saying, I want to work there someday. So the Free Press was the broadsheet newspaper, which those were the bigger ones, the bigger meaning size, the bigger pages to unfold, used to those big ones. And then the tabloid, which was considered tabloid sheet or paper, was the one like the New York Post that would editorialize, right? So that's the one where, let's say there was a child molester who was arrested. Pervert nabbed would be the headline. That's a tabloid newspaper. The one that's the one that's name calling, the one that's, doing the broadsheet or the other daily would say child abuser arrested, right? Or something, but they wouldn't use predator, pervert, sicko. And I never liked that about the Winnipeg Free Press back in the day, because that's where again, as an aspiring journalist, I was looking at that going, no, you let the reader, you give the facts, the reader decides if he's a pervert, if he's a sicko, if he's a whatever other words that I used as the example. The reader decides that. You don't tell the person, the reader, the audience, that the guy is a freak, a weirdo, a sicko, a pervert, you give the facts. The headline gives the facts. Child abuser arrested. There you go. Right? And then the story is factual. It's fact-based. John Smith, 46, was arrested on child pornography charges, You don't go and say the pervert's computer contained, 7,000 disgusting images. That's not journalism. That's not. It is in today's landscape, which again we'll get to in a second. But that wasn't how you wrote journalism. You didn't have an opinion. You didn't give. You didn't lean one way or the other. You wouldn't sway. You just present the facts. This is the story. This is what happened. Police found this. He was arrested this day. He's facing these charges. You might talk with, let's say a neighbor to go and say, what was the guy like. You might talk with, that's what you would do. But you let the other people give those pieces of information. You don't draw the conclusion, though, and go and say, his neighbors said that he was a pervert. No. His neighbors observed, unconventional behavior, or his neighbors observed something, right? You would do that. So that's something that was a key in journalism back then, was news gathering, sourcing your information, right? Citing who you got from where that information came. And that's what journalism was. And, you'd get things wrong because that's just, mistakes happen. But it seems to happen a lot now. So let's go to present day. And I'll tell you my thoughts on where news is now and where it's headed. And just even the tone of my voice, you can tell I'm not too optimistic. We'll be right back on the Scribble.
Who are the Kardashians feuding with now? What did that little thug Justin Bieber do this time? Who's getting hitched? And who's headed for Splitsville? Hear the latest celebrity news and gossip every day on Entertainment Wrap-Up. The good, the bad, the ugly, but mostly the ridiculously hilarious. It's all recapped in this daily segment at entertainmentwrapup.com. Have a laugh at the expense of the rich and famous when they take themselves way too seriously. It's 3 minutes of time-wasting fun at entertainmentwrapup.com. Check out Entertainment Wrap-Up at entertainmentwrapup.com. Brought to you by Speak Free Books.
For a great cup of joe, there's one thing you should know. Your morning brew can also be playful. Buff Boy Brewing guys make the temperature rise, and you surely feel naughty when you swallow our coffee. If you want some real heat, give your mouth a fine treat. You will want some more, rest assured. Buff Boy Brewing, you can't get enough of.
It's never too early to start thinking about your next holiday. Have you checked out Mexico recently? From tequila tasting, swimming with horses, to ziplining through the jungle and watching whales and dolphins in their natural habitat, Puerto Vallarta has it all. Visit mexico.jbonair.com to see all the fun PV has to offer. That's at mexico.jbonair.com for hundreds of photos, interviews, and videos from around the tourist hotspot. Check out mexico.jbonair.com for all the fun. That's mexico.jbonair.com.
JB here on The Scribble. As I mentioned earlier, American news anchors or journalists, reporters have talent agents, which is a little bit weird that you would have that to land a job in the news business. And, back then there was a separation between the news business and the sales department. You weren't worried about pissing off advertisers or whatever. And the advertiser or the sales department wouldn't know what the news department was working on. There just wasn't, they didn't communicate. That was irrelevant as to what was going in the news. You would just advertise in the newspaper because of the platform and what it was. There was no influence, though. And so, fast forward to present day where you see that quite a bit. I mean, there's so many segments on the news. I mean, here in Los Angeles, you don't even know what's a paid segment anymore because, they should be disclosing that, but when on the KTLA morning news, when they're sitting there and they're doing a cooking segment with somebody from such and such restaurant, I'm kind of sitting going, one, that's not news. Two, why are they choosing to profile this restaurant, right? And I'm in the business, so I know that most likely the restaurant has paid for this segment. And that's because you've blurred those lines with your audience. Well, then I don't know what's paid and what's not, right? Like they're celebrating whatever it is, National Enchilada Day, and so they've got a restaurant on there. But why did they pick that restaurant? And then why? And then always look for, is the restaurant getting a big plug at the end of that segment? Is there a full screen with their logo and their website and social media and whatever? Chances are that's a paid segment. And so that's where I think there's this line drawn of what is considered news. Now, I realize that, KTLA has Probably almost what, 20 hours of news a day? Like the whole entire daytime schedule really is almost news. So yes, you're going to run out of things to, you've got to fill time. And but that's where I'm kind of like, yeah, maybe that's where you have the specialty shows, or you have like a different segment that kind of separates it from the news. But when you don't, now obviously the segments where they bring in shelter dogs and they're trying to get them adopted, okay, that's most likely not paid, right? Like that's a PSA, it's a public service announcement. But yeah, certainly when they bring in, look at, even when they do Amazon Prime days, I'm sitting there going, why is that on the news? How is it a news story? And then you've got the anchor or the reporter on the scene going, oh my God, I bought this dress the other day. And oh my God, I totally need to get this. Why are they hyping up Amazon so much? Doesn't that seem a little bit odd to you? And so you do see that crossover now with social media, which again, back in the day, I just know this from being on the radio shows that I had. And yes, companies would send you things. For me on the radio show, I loved products because those companies were paying us to endorse them and like them. So in an entertainment show like that, okay, fine. But in the news, you're not supposed to be hawking products. You're not supposed to be tagging local businesses because that's advertising and that's paid. So if you're using your, let's say, TV station, let's say that you're using your, and have you noticed a lot of their handles? It would be, Jeremy on TV or Jeremy News or News Jeremy. And it's kind of like, oh my God, if your handle is your career like that. We call it, by the way, in the business, it's called All About Me TV now, which that's where, how many times do you see, on TikTok or on Instagram, the meteorologist dancing before the show, the anchor putting on her makeup, or this is, picking my shoes to wear today, even though we're not even going to see your fucking shoes, or getting dressed with me, or this is a day in the life of the news anchor. And then you'll watch and go, there's actually nothing about journalism in this. I see you waking up at 6, making your shake, looking pretty at the gym with your hair tied back, rolling into the office like you're a big celebrity, checking your emails, with your perfect nails, looking at yourself in the mirror, dancing before the show in the studio. I don't see you doing any actual work, though. Like, that's not a day in the life. If that's a day in the life, then, So when you see that, I mean, if you think about it back in the day, who the respectable anchors were, and, and I'm talking to the older generation who knows, Walter Cronkite or Dan Rather or whatever it was, or Katie Couric or any of those. Like, that'd be the day that you'd see Katie Couric dancing on the fucking set of the CBS Evening News, like, before. Like, no, because again, how do you look at somebody then and go, oh, she's a respect? And that's why when CNN started to do their New Year's Eve thing, and you've got Don Lemon getting sloshed out of his fucking face, and who was he with all the time? What was her name? Brooke Baldwin? Am I thinking of the right person? Like the two of them, getting shit-faced or whatever, or didn't Don Lemon say like, oh, I don't want no, broke dick man or something like that? And you're just kind of like, how do I watch you tomorrow, though, and go, oh, okay, respectable, responsible journalist? I'm not saying that news anchors can't party and have a good time on New Year's Eve, but I'm just saying, like, when you're doing that on television, right? Yeah, I'm getting shit-faced on New Year's. Yeah, fucking A. No, just don't. Because people don't have that separation anymore. Now he's one of the guys. Don Lemon is just like one of the partiers, so you can't be, there's that separation. And that's, it's kind of like me back in the day when my mom worked at our elementary school that we had all gone to, and it just seemed weird that I would know the teachers' first names, or my mom would say like, oh, Mrs. So-and-so lives in this neighborhood or whatever. It just felt weird to know that, right? And same thing, like if you ever ran into a teacher on the weekend or, during summer break or something, it just kind of seemed weird because there should be that separation between, I shouldn't see the teacher out somewhere. And so same thing with a news anchor. It's kind of like, if you see them out, okay, great, but I don't want to see Don Lemon doing, shots at the bar and getting sloppy, fall over drunk, or getting his nipple pierced or whatever the hell he did that one year. Was it his ear or was it his nipple? Can't remember. So that's now when, people look at the news and go, well, why would I trust the news when I watch the person, dancing in the studio beforehand? Think about how many professions do you see people doing that? There's something about, that it's, like I said, it's Kelsey on TV or Kelsey TV or News Kelsey, and that's your whole persona. It's, I'm gonna do selfies of being on. You're already on the fucking television. Like, you've already got the platform to be seen every day. Like, we don't need the behind the scenes. We covered, as I said, the wall behind me has a whole bunch of pictures of me on red carpets covering award shows. you didn't do selfies and things like that on the carpet back in the day. And I wasn't giving the behind the scenes because I always said, you know what, you wow the audience with the experience. There's something that loses the magic when you then take them behind the scenes and show them, okay, prepping for the show. You might do that for the odd time. If you've got, let's say, like a milestone, like when we did our 15th anniversary show, which kind of was the end, that was when I signed off of our syndicated Top 40 show. So, we took some extra pictures and kind of had me narrating some videos. Like before, the last segment was on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry. So I was backstage with the camera and saying like, I'm about to walk out on the stage and tape our last segment or whatever. Yeah, okay, fine. But it was not like that because it's not about me. The show that we were doing was about the audience. The red carpets that we were covering were about me interviewing the celebrities having their moment at the award show or whatever the event is. It was not about, hey, can I get a selfie with you? Or, oh my God, I'm such a big fan. You would never do that. And actually, we had Melissa Rivers on the show back in the day. Her and her mom, Joan Rivers, would do red carpets and things. And I remember saying that to her, like, you would never have asked for a selfie. Actually, I think you were even told that you can't ask them to, like, record your voicemail or something. Like, there was just, oh yeah. You wouldn't ask for an autograph. You couldn't do anything like that. You definitely would not fan out at them. You would not be, oh my God, I loved you, and so I go, oh my God, it's so great to meet you. You didn't do things like that because that puts you at a like now you're one of the audience, right? You're not professional. You're not that authority. You're now on a lower level. You're not on an equal playing field as the guest that you're talking to. And this is 20 some years of doing this, so take me on my word for that. It's in my interviews when we would have celebrity guests on the radio, even though it could have been, we had Judge Judy, we had tons of people. Never did I fan out. Before we would be rolling on the air, I would say, oh my God, it's so great to chat with you or whatever, but never would you gush on the segment. Never when you're on the air. You do that at the beginning to kind of break the ice and ass kiss a little bit, sure, fine. But never did you do that in a segment. Never. I'm even just kind of feeling gaggy just thinking about that because also that's just not me, so I wouldn't do it. So fast forward to today's news, as I was saying, is that you don't get people focused on the news. It's all about me TV, which, every reporter, and think about that too, right? If you've seen a news anchor's Instagram page, undoubtedly they have the picture of themselves standing in front of the camera before doing a live shot somewhere, right? So they've got somebody, whether it's the camera guy or somebody else, taking a picture of them about to do their job. Right? They'll have the picture of them with their logo branded jacket, holding the microphone with maybe a light beside them, and preparing for the 5 o'clock live hit or something. And it's just like, we're gonna see it on TV. Like, why do I need the behind the scenes? Like, and then you'll have the ones that are covering, a flood or devastation, and and it's the Prissy Valley girl who's got her nice cute rain boots on, and she's talking about, it's like, you realize that a whole bunch of people lost their homes and 4 people died, right? So you might want to kind of tone down the, I'm here, look at me, look how glam I am. Yeah, you don't do that. You don't. Because you look really like a cunt, if I can use that word, and I'm going to. You really do look like an insensitive cunt when you do something like that. You really do. And, I don't necessarily agree with somebody like Megyn Kelly a whole lot, but I mean, when she went in on David Muir that time when he was at the, was it flooding or what was that? Where he had the pin on, the clothespin or something in the back of his jacket to make himself look slimmer. And she even said, you know what, back in the day I covered tragedies and events like that, and you would wear a little bit of makeup just because television or whatever, but you wouldn't go full on glam squad. She said you'd have your hair tied back, wearing a baseball cap with the logo or something, but it was not, I'm getting my hair done or whatever, because that is insensitive. That is tone deaf. That's missing the mark. And that's where you lose the audience respect at that point, right? And doing something like that. So that's the state of news today. Now let's talk very quickly, because we are over time, and the state of news is going by the way of YouTube and TikTok or the other digital platforms that people are tuning into. And it's not necessarily the mainstream, newspapers or television or radio stations anymore. And I think the problem with that, though, is, again, it's very opinion based. Think about any food blogger who isn't giving you any sort of researched information, right? A blogger was I always thought, just sort of an opinion. When I would do travel shows for our radio programming, we got the fact sheet. We've got information. We would interview whoever it was. If it's a restaurant, we're interviewing the owner or the chef or whatever it is. So we're asking him questions. We're giving facts. We're giving details about the history of the place. We're going to put some food pictures because that's just what is expected. But it wasn't just me talking about the experience of going there. Oh, I loved the steak, or the Caesar salad was great. Oh, the wine was, and it's reasonably priced. No, I'm there to, in a way, sort of do journalism. Obviously, I'm going to have to say positive things because they're paying to be on the show. But again, it's not just me giving my opinion. I'm giving you details. And so now when you look at these news outlets, how much research are they doing? Are they giving actual statistics from places? So when you have something like what is it called? I talked about this show on here before, Midas Touch. And they're the ones that like rip on Trump all the time. And they have this sensational headlines on YouTube to make you click, right? Trump has meltdown as da-da-da-da-da. And they're really not... Trump didn't have a meltdown, but that's the angle that they're going with, and they're hyping it up, and, you could use the term hyperbole, but it's very sensationalized, and it's very... I guess, is that what clickbait is? Clickbait, I thought was... They're saying use the word clickbait. I thought clickbait was when it's promising one thing, it's something completely different. Well, I guess that is in a way what he's doing. You're right. I guess that sort of is. But like, to me, again, that's not journalism. That's very slanted already. But the problem is that then you have the Midas Touch guy. I don't know his name, but it's the balding brother, not the hot one. He's sitting there and he might be thrashing the mainstream media, and that's independent journalists are the ones that are telling you this story, whatever. But you're also editorializing, and you don't realize that you're doing it. I think you probably do realize that you're doing it, but your audience is not like, that's not... There's a guy in my hometown of Winnipeg who, again, is a citizen journalist and is always, fundraising to help support his little platform. But when I read it, I always just go and say, he gives too much, it's the sensationalized headlines. He'll rant and name call or something in the reporting, and that's where you lose me, unfortunately. And then very quickly, I mentioned earlier about the whole political thing with the Americans and the Canadians and how news is just very different. We had Chris Cuomo on my radio show. Or sorry, we taped it. I don't think that we ever aired it. We taped a segment with him back in the day. This was when I think he just joined News Nation. He was already off CNN. And so he was out on a fishing boat, and I don't know why. We had scheduled it, and I guess either he went anyway and thought that he could just tape this interview. It was so windy, his phone kept cutting out. It was just a terrible interview. That's, I think, why it never aired. But I would ask him about news. Like, I wanted to talk about news, right? He's on News Nation. He just got this job. This is a new network. This is, and every question that I asked him, he turned it to politics in his answer. And so I almost wanted to stop at one point and say, let's just talk about news in general. But it was that interview, it was that segment or that chat with him that made me go and say, even as a news anchor, he's all about politics. That's just, I guess, what he thinks they want. Most Canadians, honestly, right now, if I were to say to you, I could tell you the top probably 3 or 5 stories in the United States this week. Could I do that about Canada? No, actually, I couldn't. And now I'm in West Hollywood, so I'm a little bit more tuned in because of my surroundings. But even when I'm in Canada, I'm still watching the American networks. So I know more about what's going on in Los Angeles when I'm in Canada. Like, I don't even know what's happening in my own city. And so maybe I'm part of the problem that I'm not tuned in. But I'm also not interested in seeing the gloom and doom of my hometown. And so that's part of it too. It's nothing to do... Well, I also feel that it's very amateurish. I feel like the news industry in Winnipeg, I don't care for the anchors because it's all these new people. Oh, that's another thing that I can't stand is watching the anchor, the reporter on the scene, clutching their phone or reading off their phone. You had to... Let me go back to my school days for a second. We did a live hit exercise. And so that was where you were given... The instructor at the front of the class gave us some details about I can't remember what it was, but let's say it was a fire. It was a 4-story building, 3 injuries, 17 firefighters attended. He listed the details. Like, he just gave you the bullet points of what the story was. You had 5 minutes to prepare. 5 minutes. Then you had to stand up in the front of the room, and he would pretend to introduce you on the news. All right, on the scene right now is Jeremy Bradley at the scene of the fire. Jeremy, what can you tell us? And then you had to fill whatever it was, a minute and a half or however much time he gave you. No notes. You were not allowed notes. And again, phones weren't a thing. Cell phones, all that stuff wasn't a thing back 25 or however many years ago. So you had to wing it. You had to memorize your key talking points. You had to, fill that time. And so now, like I said, what I hate is when I see the reporter standing there and they'll step aside to let you see the back. And then all of a sudden, if they don't move quick enough, if the camera doesn't, you'll see them all of a sudden then hold up their phone and start reading off their phone because now they're narrating a script. And so that's, there's this dependence. Like, then you don't need to be there. Then you could really just have, I could just read this story. There's no sense in, if you're just reading off a script. And so that's something I don't like as well. Oh, another thing is when they have them out there live at 11 o'clock at night for something that happened like yesterday. They do that again in Los Angeles quite a bit. There was a break-in, or no, there was something happening at the zoo in Los Angeles. There was, I think it was elephants. This was going back a year or two ago. These elephants, controversial story about the elephants being moved from the zoo. It happened the day before. So let's say it's Wednesday today. It happened on Tuesday morning. They had somebody there Wednesday at 11 p.m. The zoo was closed at 11. He's standing in the parking lot of the zoo. Why? What's the point? Why is he out there at 11 o'clock? Is he looting? Is he going and breaking in? Why is the dude in an empty parking lot at 11 o'clock at night at the zoo? It closed at 6. What? So they do these live hits, and you ask yourself and go, why exactly is he out there right now? What is he doing? Or again, in Los Angeles, there was, I can't remember what the story was. Something had happened on, I think, Mother's Day. And so we had the news on in our office. And they had the poor bastard reporter on the same street, on the same, in the same front of the same house. So what did he do? He just sat in the news van every hour, so his story was coming up at 1:17. So he's like, okay, well, we're going to go out and do this live hit again. And then it's now 1:18. Okay, let's go sit in the van now until 2:17 when we do it again. And you're just like, that's how he spent his day. He could be going and covering another story. He could be, helping another colleague out with a story or doing something. No, he spends his 8-hour shift or, however much time. He's going to do 4 more hits there. So he's going to spend 4 hours sitting in a news van. Again, to stand in front of a street that really there's no reason for him to be there. So, again, it's become too much of an entertainment thing. The reporters are all about me. They're all about, look at my glam life. I'm going on TV now. Look at my pretty boots and the flood. And, oh, let's dance before the commercial break or whatever it is. And I just look at that and go, how do I take them seriously? How, really? I mean, So tell me what you think of the news business. It's not the news industry. It is the news business now, where it's entertainment. It's, I don't know. Yes, it's entertaining to watch Anderson Cooper, giggling with tequila on New Year's Eve. Do you take him less seriously when you watch him the next day? Honestly, now that I'm talking it through, I still take him seriously because I know that he's not wild party animal, right? Don Lemon, who is more opinion and is more, aggressive with his thoughts. Well, he's not on CNN anymore, but you know what I'm saying. I would look at him kind of like, I know that he's got an agenda because of the way he talks about it, right? And that's the thing with cable news is that its opinion is crossing over into news. So even though it's a news show on cable news and it's primetime news, when you open the first 10 minutes of the show giving an opinion and railing on the president or whatever it is, I can't now go, and now you're going to get to the news of the day. Well, you've already given me your opinion on the president or whatever it is. Or then you're going to have a panel discussion, but your bias is already very clear because you just ranted about how you disagree with what the president is doing, right? So I don't see you now as an impartial news presenter. I see you as a commentator. I see you as, and that's the problem with cable news is that every one of those shows for the most part now is they'll tell the story and then they'll have 3 panelists on there arguing and disagreeing and yelling about it. And each one is wrong, right? The other is being told that they're wrong by the others. And so then that doesn't help draw the conclusion for the viewer. It doesn't let the viewer decide. It's just, oh, well, wait, she yelled louder or she had a better zinger or he said this and whatever. And so what is the takeaway from that, right? It's all political. It's all opinion. It's all commentary. And that's where the lines are blurred with news. So Send me an email. Tell me what you think. Live, L-I-V-E, at jbonair.com. Live at jbonair.com. And we are out of time, so we got to wrap this up. My name is Jeremy Bradley. This is The Scribble. I will talk to you same time next time. Bye for now.
We hear you chirping. Get scribbling. Tweet up The Scribble at The Scribble Show. Join the discussion with Jeremy Bradley. It's all going down right now on Twitter at The Scribble Show and at thescribbleshow.com. Want more Scribble? Check out thescribbleshow.com for past shows, celebrity interviews, cheapskate tips, and more. That's at thescribbleshow.com and on Twitter at The Scribble Show. The Scribble is a speak-free media presentation.